The Silent Witness revolves around a lawyer named Evelyn Moore, who specializes in criminal defense. She takes on a high-profile case that quickly spirals out of control, leading her to uncover dark secrets hidden within her own life and the judicial system. She becomes a silent witness to a conspiracy that could ruin everything she believes in. As Evelyn digs deeper, she realizes the people she trusts the most might be involved in a series of crimes, and she herself might be the key witness to something much larger than she initially thought. She advises her client how to protect their lives. Little did she know that she will need that advice, for her life is in danger. Chapter 1: The High-Profile Case. Evelyn Moore had seen her fair share of high-stakes cases, but this one felt different. The weight of it pressed down on her chest as she sat alone in her office, the cold light from the desk lamp casting shadows across the room. The case on her desk wasn't just another rich man accused of murder. It was a labyrinth of deception and hidden truths, and Evelyn had a feeling she was only scratching the surface. Victor Calloway, a billionaire real estate mogul, had been accused of orchestrating a series of murders, all seemingly unrelated. But Evelyn had seen something the others hadn't: the way the victims' lives were linked. She could feel it in her bones. This wasn't just about Calloway trying to eliminate his competition. There was something darker at play, something that went beyond the greed and power his empire had built. The media was having a field day with the case. Headlines screamed of Calloway's wealth, his influence, and his shadowy dealings. But as Evelyn dug deeper into the case files, she saw the cracks in the story. The evidence against him was too clean, too perfect. It was as though someone had set him up to take the fall. But who? And why? Calloway wasn't just any businessman. He was a force in the city, his influence stretching across politics, law enforcement, and the media. To accuse him of orchestrating multiple murders was one thing, but Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that he was being used as a pawn. This case was far bigger than a single murder trial. It was a web of corruption, and the question was, who was pulling the strings? Her fingers hovered over the file. A single name had caught her eye: the Silent Witness. It had appeared in the evidence, just a mention, nothing more. But the more Evelyn thought about it, the more intrigued she became. She couldn't shake the feeling that the key to this case was tied to that very phrase. Who was the Silent Witness? And why had the term appeared in her father's notes years ago? Evelyn hadn't thought much about her father in years, but now, as she faced a case that seemed so intricately tied to corruption and conspiracy, his sudden disappearance made sense in a way it hadn't before. She was too young when he vanished, too naive to understand the danger he had been in. He had been a prosecutor, one of the best, before he disappeared without a trace, leaving nothing but a cold trail of dead ends and unanswered questions. The police had no answers, the case went cold, and Evelyn had been forced to move on. But as she sat in her office now, reviewing the Calloway files, she realized how little she truly knew about what had happened to her father. And that email she'd just received? The one with the cryptic message: "The truth is hidden in your own bloodline. Look deeper into your father's past." Her blood ran cold. The words sent a chill up her spine, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Who had sent it? And how did they know about her father? The message was as clear as it was haunting. The key to unlocking this case, perhaps even her father's disappearance, was buried in the past, a past that Evelyn had spent years trying to forget. She sat back in her chair, staring at the screen in front of her, her heart beating faster now. She needed to dig deeper. She needed answers. But where to begin? There was so much she didn't know, so much she couldn't even begin to comprehend. And the deeper she went, the more she realized how dangerous this investigation was becoming. With a sigh, she closed the file on Calloway. For now, the case would have to wait. There was something else she needed to do, something far more personal. Evelyn stood up, her mind racing. She had to go back to her father's old office. She had to dig through the boxes of his old papers and see if there was anything that might give her a lead. The Silent Witness. Her father had written about it, but she had never understood its meaning. Now, it felt like a sign, a warning. She could no longer ignore it. The office was quiet when she arrived, a thick layer of dust covering the furniture, as if time itself had been suspended in the years since her father's disappearance. The old wooden desk, once a center of activity, sat abandoned in the corner. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she stepped inside. The place looked exactly as it had been when she was a child, frozen in time. But it no longer felt like home. It felt like a tomb. Her father's case files were stacked neatly on one of the shelves. She had seen them 100 times growing up, never thinking much of it. But now, she felt a strange sense of urgency. She ran her fingers over the old leather-bound folders, pulling one at random from the shelf. Inside was a folder labeled Operation Elysium. Her heart skipped. She had never seen this one before. She opened it carefully, her fingers trembling as she flipped through the pages. They were filled with her father's handwriting, detailed notes, and references to powerful figures: politicians, businessmen, and judges. At the center of it all was a name she recognized immediately: Victor Calloway. Her stomach twisted. Her father had been investigating him long before the murders had been linked to Calloway. It wasn't just the murders. There was something much bigger, something that involved every aspect of the system Evelyn had always trusted. And it seemed her father had been getting closer to the truth. Too close. But there was more. Among the pages, Evelyn found a note written in her father's hand. It was simple, but it sent a shiver down her spine. The silent witness will be the key. Protect them. They will expose everything. Evelyn closed the folder, her hands shaking. She was staring at the same puzzle her father had been trying to solve. The same puzzle that had cost him his life. And now, it seemed, the pieces were beginning to fall into place. The silent witness wasn't just someone in the background. It was someone who held the truth. Someone who could expose the conspiracy her father had died trying to uncover. Suddenly, the phone on the desk rang, the shrill sound cutting through the silence. Evelyn jumped, startled. She picked it up. "Ms. Moore?" A voice on the other end said, smooth and calculated. "I'm Vincent. I believe we need to talk." Chapter 2: A Haunted Past. Evelyn hadn't been back to this house in over 5 years. Standing at the doorstep, she hesitated, her hand frozen on the doorknob. Her father's disappearance had always been a ghost that haunted the corners of her mind. But the unanswered questions had become too much to ignore. The truth was somewhere inside this house, and she couldn't run from it any longer. The house had been her childhood home, a place filled with memories of laughter and warmth. But after her father disappeared, the walls seemed to close in on her, the silence deafening. Nothing had been the same since that day. The warm dinners, the comforting voice of her father calling her into the study. Everything had vanished the moment he walked out the door and never came back. The smell of dust and old paper filled the air as she stepped inside, the creaking of the floorboards beneath her feet sounding too loud in the stillness. She could still see the faint outlines of the furniture where it had once stood. Her father's leather chair behind the desk, the bookshelf that had lined the wall with law books. But now the house felt cold, abandoned, as though it had been frozen in time, waiting for something or someone to return. Her father had always been meticulous, leaving behind a trail of notes, files, and cases. As she moved through the rooms, she felt a sense of eerie familiarity, as if she had never left. The study door creaked open in front of her, and she found herself standing in front of her father's desk, the place where all his investigations began. She sat in the chair, running her fingers over the dusty surface, the old leather binding of case files staring back at her. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A drawer slightly ajar, just enough for her to pull it open. Inside were more files, more notes, and a single crumpled piece of paper with the words Operation Elysium written across the top in her father's neat handwriting. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She had heard of this file before. Her father had mentioned it once in passing, but she never thought to look further into it. She pulled it out carefully, her hands trembling. The file was thicker than she expected, packed with documents detailing what seemed to be an extensive investigation. The contents were overwhelming. Her eyes scanned the papers, slowly piecing together fragments of names and dates. Victor Calloway was at the center, but there was much more. There were connections to influential figures in politics, law enforcement, and media. People who seemed to be entwined in a network of power and corruption that Evelyn had never imagined. Her father had been investigating something far bigger than a single case. This was a conspiracy that reached far beyond the legal world. The deeper Evelyn read, the more questions arose. Her father's notes were filled with references to a shadowy group, a group that controlled everything from the media to the courts. It was clear he had been on the verge of exposing something that could shake the very foundation of the country's power structure. But what struck Evelyn the most was a small, handwritten note at the bottom of one of the pages. The handwriting was hurried, as if her father had written it in a rush, possibly just before he disappeared. The silent witness is the key. They are the one who holds the truth. If anything happens to me, you must protect them. They will expose everything. Evelyn's heart stopped as she read those words. The silent witness. Her father had mentioned it before, but she had never understood the full significance. And now, as she read the words, she realized that the witness wasn't just a bystander in the case. The witness was someone who had been carefully protected, someone whose role in this conspiracy was critical. Evelyn felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She wasn't sure what this meant yet, but she was certain of one thing: she was being watched. Whoever was behind this conspiracy had been keeping an eye on her, perhaps for years. The message was clear. She had been drawn into something far bigger than just a murder case. Her father had known the truth, and now it was up to her to finish what he had started. She closed the file and stood up, the weight of the discovery settling in. The walls felt like they were closing in around her, the reality of the situation settling heavily on her chest. Evelyn could feel the presence of something, someone, just outside the door, watching her. She turned sharply, half expecting to see a shadow standing in the doorway. But there was no one. The house was as silent as it had always been, but now it felt different, darker. The shadows seemed to stretch across the walls, each corner hiding something she wasn't ready to face. Suddenly, the sound of a car door slamming outside broke the silence, followed by the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel driveway. Evelyn froze. She wasn't alone. Someone was here. Her heart raced as she quickly scanned the room, glancing at the door. The footsteps were getting closer, and she knew she had little time. She couldn't stay here. Not with this information. Not with everything she had uncovered. Evelyn grabbed the file, stuffing it into her bag, and bolted from the room, her footsteps echoing in the empty house. She moved swiftly through the hallways, her pulse pounding in her ears. She needed to leave before anyone found out she had been here. Whoever was approaching, she didn't trust them. Not now. Not when she was so close to understanding what had happened to her father, and what was still lurking in the shadows. As she reached the front door, she glanced over her shoulder. For a brief moment, she thought she saw a figure standing in the hallway. It was gone before she could focus, but the feeling lingered. Someone had been watching her, and now, it seemed, someone was coming to stop her. With a final glance at the house that had once been her home, Evelyn stepped outside, the cool air hitting her face like a slap. She didn't know what was waiting for her next, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going to stop until she uncovered the full truth. Whatever it took, whoever was behind this conspiracy, she would expose them. She would finish what her father had started. As the door closed behind her, Evelyn realized she was no longer just a lawyer defending a client. She was part of something much bigger, something that would change everything. And there was no going back now. Chapter 3: The Silent Witness. Evelyn's heart pounded as she drove through the darkened streets. The file she had retrieved from her father's office clutched tightly in her hands. The chill of the night air seeped through the cracks of the car's windows, but it wasn't the cold that sent shivers down her spine. It was the weight of what she had uncovered. The phrase "silent witness" lingered in her mind, echoing like a whispered warning. Her father had known something she still couldn't quite grasp, and now it seemed like it was her turn to pick up the pieces. She thought about the words from his last note. They will expose everything. Who were they? And why had her father been so desperate to protect this silent witness? As she pulled into her driveway, the quiet, familiar surroundings of her home did little to ease her anxiety. The file had revealed far more than just a simple conspiracy involving Calloway. The deeper she dug, the more she realized her father's investigation had gone much further. This was about power, control, people who had their hands in everything, from politics to the media, manipulating events to suit their needs. And her father had been the one to expose it. He had gotten too close to the truth, and they had silenced him before he could tell anyone. But what if she was next? She stepped out of the car, glancing around as she locked the door. The street was quiet, too quiet, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. A shadow flickered in the corner of her eye, and she froze, her pulse quickening. Nothing. There was no one there, but the unease was impossible to ignore. She shook off the sensation and hurried inside, locking the door behind her. The house felt eerily still. Evelyn had always felt a sense of comfort here, but tonight, it felt like a trap, a place she couldn't escape from, no matter how hard she tried. She dropped the file onto the kitchen table, her fingers trembling as she reached for a glass of water. The weight of what she had learned was suffocating, and yet, she knew there was more to discover. Evelyn pored over the file again, but this time, something stood out, something she hadn't noticed earlier. Among the names of corrupt politicians, judges, and businessmen, there was a name that sent a chill down her spine. Victor Calloway. His name was listed at the top of a list of high-profile individuals who had been involved in multiple criminal activities. She had suspected Calloway's involvement in some of the murders, but now it seemed clear. He was a key player in a much larger operation. The case she had taken on wasn't just about defending him. It was about uncovering the dark underbelly of the city itself. Her father's notes described Calloway as a ruthless businessman, but Evelyn had seen a different side of him. The side that seemed almost vulnerable, caught in a web he couldn't escape from. She had wondered why he had taken such a personal interest in her defense, why he had reached out when other lawyers had backed away. Now she understood. He was afraid of the same people who had taken everything from her father, and afraid of the truth, which, if exposed, could destroy them all. Suddenly, the sound of her phone ringing broke the silence. The caller ID flashed an unfamiliar number. Evelyn hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello." The voice on the other end was calm, but it sent a chill down her spine. "Ms. Moore, I trust you are making progress on the case," the voice said. It was a man's voice, smooth and authoritative, but there was something off about it, something calculating. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She didn't recognize the voice, but she knew exactly who it was. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the anxiety that had crept into her chest. "I'm just someone who wants to help you, Evelyn," the man said, his voice tinged with amusement. "You see, we know what you're looking for. We've been watching you. You're getting closer, and that's a problem. You wouldn't want to make the wrong move, would you?" Evelyn's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "What do you want?" There was a pause on the other end, and Evelyn could hear the faint sound of shuffling papers. "It's simple, really. You stop digging, and we leave you and your little investigation alone. Keep going, and we will make sure you regret it. There are people far more powerful than you could ever imagine involved in this. People who won't hesitate to stop you." The line went silent, and Evelyn's grip on the phone tightened. She knew exactly what the man was implying. Whoever was behind this conspiracy had their eyes on her, and they weren't afraid to strike. But Evelyn wasn't going to back down now, not after everything she had uncovered. "I'll finish what my father started," she said, her voice low but filled with determination. "You can threaten me all you want, but I'm not afraid of you." The voice on the other end chuckled darkly. "We'll see about that." The call ended abruptly, leaving Evelyn standing in the kitchen, her hand still gripping the phone. She felt a strange mix of fear and adrenaline pumping through her veins. The truth was out there, but the closer she got to it, the more dangerous it became. She had thought she was just defending a client, but now she realized the case was much more than that. It was a fight for survival. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed from the front door, startling her out of her thoughts. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting anyone. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Evelyn's instincts kicked in. She didn't want to answer, but there was no escaping it. The darkness that had been creeping closer now seemed to have engulfed her. She slowly made her way to the door, peering through the peephole, but there was no one there. Confused, she opened the door, her eyes scanning the empty porch. It was late, and the street was deserted. The only thing that greeted her was a small envelope, lying innocently on the ground. Evelyn bent down and picked it up, the weight of it in her hand sending a chill through her. The envelope was plain, with no return address. She hesitated for a moment before tearing it open. Inside was a single piece of paper with 2 words written on it in bold red ink. "Trust no one." Evelyn's blood ran cold as the reality of the situation hit her. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching her. They were controlling everything, pulling the strings from the shadows. And they weren't going to stop until they had everything under their control. The game had changed, and Evelyn Moore was in the center of it. Chapter 4: The Underworld Connection. Evelyn's mind raced as she drove down the dark, empty streets. The weight of everything she had uncovered was suffocating. Her father's investigation, the network of corruption, and the cryptic warning she had received. It was all spiraling out of control. Every new revelation brought her closer to the truth, but with each step, she felt the danger closing in. The message she had received earlier that night, the warning, "Trust no one," echoed in her mind. She had been betrayed by those she trusted most: Richard Gale, her mentor, and Claire Thornton, her closest friend. Both had been working with the very people she was trying to bring down. Now, with the walls closing in, Evelyn had to rely on the few allies she had left, and even then, she wasn't sure who to trust. Her destination was clear: Detective Samuel Black. Samuel had been a part of her father's investigation and had always been someone she could rely on. Or so she thought. The man had his own secrets, but Evelyn hoped, prayed, that he was on her side. Evelyn pulled up to a rundown diner on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered above her, casting an eerie glow across the parking lot. She had arranged to meet Samuel here, in a place that seemed as much of a hideout as anything else. The place was always empty, making it the perfect spot for a clandestine conversation. Inside, the scent of coffee lingered in the air, thick and bitter. The waitress gave Evelyn a cursory glance as she entered but said nothing. Samuel was already seated at a booth in the back, his face half hidden in shadow. His dark eyes locked onto hers as she approached. "You're late," he said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "Had to make sure no one was following me," Evelyn replied, sitting down across from him. She tried to steady her breath, but her hands were shaking. The weight of everything she had discovered was finally catching up to her. Samuel nodded, his eyes scanning the room. "Good instinct. You've got a target on your back, Evelyn. We both do." "I know." She leaned forward, pulling the file she had retrieved from her father's study out of her bag. "I've been going through this all night. The deeper I dig, the more I realize how far-reaching this network really is." She handed him the file. He opened it slowly, glancing over the names and notes her father had left behind. His expression didn't change, but Evelyn could tell he was processing everything, piecing the puzzle together just as she had. "Victor Calloway," he muttered, tapping a finger against the page. "He's at the center of it all, isn't he? But it's not just about him, is it? There's something bigger going on here." Evelyn nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Calloway is just the tip of the iceberg. My father was investigating a conspiracy that stretches across every level of society: politicians, judges, businessmen, and even law enforcement. It's a network of corruption, controlling everything from the legal system to the media. My father was close to exposing them. That's why he was silenced." Samuel's eyes narrowed as he scanned the file. "You're talking about the kind of power that doesn't just get wiped out overnight. These people have been in control for years. The legal system, the media, they own everything. Your father was getting too close, and now they've turned their attention to you." Evelyn swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. "I know. I'm not just trying to clear Calloway's name here. I'm trying to bring down an entire system. And they won't stop until they silence me, just like they did with my father." Samuel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I've been part of your father's investigation before, but I didn't know the full extent of what he was uncovering. I'm not sure what you're getting into, Evelyn. These people have resources, connections, and they won't hesitate to destroy anyone in their way." Evelyn's eyes locked onto his. "I don't have a choice anymore. The truth needs to come out. I can't walk away from this." The silence stretched between them. Samuel sighed, rubbing his face with his hands. "I know, but you need to understand the risks. These people won't just kill you. They'll ruin everything you've worked for. They'll tear apart your life, destroy your reputation, and make sure no one ever believes you. If you're going to do this, you need to be prepared for what's coming." "I've been preparing my whole life for this," Evelyn replied quietly. "I grew up watching my father fight for justice, and I'm not going to let his death be in vain." Samuel's eyes softened for a moment, a flicker of admiration in his gaze. But then, the harsh reality of their situation hit again. "I can help, Evelyn, but you have to promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me you'll be careful. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it gets. And if we're going to take them down, we can't do it alone." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "I'm not alone. I have you." Samuel nodded slowly, his expression serious. "We'll need to get to the heart of it. We'll need to find the people at the top of this network. Calloway is the middleman, but the real masterminds are still out there." Evelyn felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. They were about to step into a war against an enemy that controlled everything. But it was a war she was ready to fight. As they continued to plan, Evelyn felt the walls closing in on her. The conspiracy was vast, and every step she took brought her closer to the people who would stop at nothing to keep their secrets hidden. But she couldn't stop now. She had already lost too much. It was time to finish what her father had started. Chapter 5: The Ties That Bind. Evelyn sat across from Detective Samuel Black in the dimly lit diner, her fingers tapping nervously on the coffee cup in front of her. The quiet hum of the old refrigerator and the faint clinking of silverware in the back were the only sounds breaking the silence. But inside her head, everything was racing. She had uncovered more than she ever expected in her father's old files, and now, with each passing hour, the danger was becoming more real. Victor Calloway's name was at the heart of everything, but Evelyn knew he wasn't the mastermind. The people pulling the strings were far more powerful, and their influence spread like roots beneath the surface, entwining with every aspect of the city's political and legal systems. Samuel's face was unreadable as he took a long sip of his coffee. "We need to get to the core of this, Evelyn," he said, his voice low but urgent. "The names you've uncovered, these are not just business transactions. These are people who have been using the legal system to cover their tracks for years. Your father was onto something big, and now it's your turn to finish it." Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "I've been thinking about that. My father's notes mention the silent witness. But who are they? I don't think it's just a metaphor. It's someone important, someone who knows everything, but they've been kept in the dark, too." Samuel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're right. The silent witness is key. Your father must have known that person's identity, but it's been buried for a reason. We need to find them before someone else does." The weight of his words sank into her chest. Whoever this silent witness was, they were tied to everything, and whoever was after them had already silenced her father. If the conspiracy wanted to keep this person hidden, Evelyn couldn't afford to let them succeed. But she had no leads, only fragments of information, and the sense that she was running out of time. "I think it's connected to something bigger," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been going over everything, and I think it's not just Calloway. This network, they're embedded in the system. The judges, the police, the media, they control it all. They've manipulated everything to keep themselves in power." Samuel studied her closely. "That's why they wanted your father gone. And that's why they're coming after you now." Evelyn swallowed hard. "I need to know everything. I can't keep guessing. The pieces are there, but they don't make sense. My father, he left me clues. The silent witness. But what does it mean?" Samuel sat back, rubbing his hand over his face. "Your father wasn't just a prosecutor. He was too close to exposing the entire network. The only reason he got as far as he did was because he knew the right people. But when you start pulling at the strings of a system this entrenched, you start drawing attention. If I had known what your father was up against, I would have helped him. But by the time I figured it out, he was already dead." The guilt in his voice was evident, but Evelyn couldn't afford to dwell on it. "Then help me finish this, Samuel. Help me expose them." He met her gaze. "I will. But we need a plan. We need to find the silent witness, and we need to make sure we have enough to bring down everyone involved, before they silence us, too." Later that night, Evelyn lay awake in bed, the weight of the evening's conversation pressing down on her. She had always known that corruption ran deep in the system, but never in her wildest dreams had she imagined how far it went. The silent witness, was it someone she knew? Someone who had been watching all along? She couldn't shake the feeling that the answers were within her reach, yet she had no idea where to start. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, snapping her from her thoughts. The text was simple: "Meet me at the warehouse. Midnight. I have information on the silent witness." The message was from an unknown number. Evelyn hesitated for only a moment before grabbing her jacket and heading out the door. She couldn't afford to wait. The pieces were falling into place, but this could be the breakthrough she needed. She couldn't trust anyone, but if there was a chance to find the silent witness, she had to take it. The streets were dark as she drove to the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Her headlights sliced through the fog, casting long shadows across the pavement. The silence in the car was deafening as she drove, the anticipation building with each passing second. She didn't know who this person was or what they would reveal, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't walk away from this. As she parked outside the warehouse, Evelyn's breath caught. The place was empty, save for a few broken windows and graffiti strewn across the walls. But there, standing in the shadows near the entrance, was a figure. Her heart raced as she approached, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. The figure stepped forward, revealing a man with a rough, tired face, his eyes hidden beneath a hood. He said nothing at first, just stood there watching her as if he was waiting for her to speak. "Who are you?" Evelyn asked, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. The man's lips curled into a grim smile. "The name doesn't matter. What matters is that I know who the silent witness is. And I know they've been keeping an eye on you." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "The person you're looking for. They've been trying to stay hidden for years. But they're about to be exposed, whether they want it or not. Evelyn took a step closer, her voice tight with urgency. Where are they? I need to find them. I need to know everything. The man's expression darkened. You're too close, Evelyn. They've already started moving against you. If you want to find the silent witness, you need to stop digging. You need to get out of town. Now. Evelyn stared at him, shock and confusion clouding her thoughts. What are you talking about? I can't stop now. I can't. Before she could finish, the sound of tires screeching filled the air, followed by the sharp flash of headlights. The man turned abruptly, pulling her toward the shadows. Get down, he hissed. The sound of the car grew louder. Someone was coming. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she ducked behind a stack of crates, trying to stay hidden in the dim light. The car screeched to a halt, and two figures stepped out, both armed with guns. Evelyn held her breath, pressing herself against the cold concrete. The last thing she wanted was to be caught now, not when she was so close to finding out who the silent witness was. The man beside her gripped her arm, pulling her even deeper into the shadows. I told you to leave, but now it's too late. You're in this now, whether you like it or not. Evelyn's mind raced. She had no idea who these men were, or what they wanted, but she knew one thing: she wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Chapter 6, A Game of Shadows. The hours following the confrontation at the warehouse were a blur for Evelyn. She barely remembered how she had made it back to her car, her heart still pounding in her chest from the close call. She'd never been this close to being caught before. The men who had appeared at the warehouse had been part of something bigger, and she could feel the walls closing in. The man who had given her the cryptic warning. He had said she was in too deep. But there was no going back now. The silent witness, whoever they were, was connected to everything. The web of corruption her father had been investigating stretched across the city like a spider's nest. The network was so deeply embedded that Evelyn couldn't even trust the people she had once considered allies. Her cell phone buzzed as she sat in the parked car, trying to gather her thoughts. The text message was from Samuel Black. He had been silent for hours, and Evelyn had begun to fear that he had turned his back on her, just like the others. But the message was short, to the point. Meet me. I have something you need to see. She didn't hesitate. Whatever Samuel had, it was the breakthrough she had been hoping for. The drive to the meeting spot was quiet, the streets eerily empty. Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should, and every sound felt like it was amplified in the silence. She pulled into an old parking garage on the outskirts of town, where Samuel had instructed her to meet him. The garage was dark, the only light coming from a flickering bulb overhead. The smell of oil and rust filled the air. Evelyn parked her car and stepped out, her heart racing in anticipation. She could see Samuel's car parked at the far end of the garage. The engine was still warm, but he wasn't inside. She walked cautiously toward it, every step echoing in the quiet space. Samuel? She called softly, her voice reverberating off the concrete walls. No answer. She moved closer, her hand brushing the cold metal of his car, and then her eyes caught something, an envelope resting on the windshield. She froze. The envelope was plain, with no markings or identifying features. Her heart skipped a beat as she grabbed it and ripped it open. Inside was a single piece of paper with one sentence written in bold, dark ink. You're getting too close. Stop now. A chill ran down Evelyn's spine. She didn't need to be told twice. This was no longer just about Calloway or the silent witness. Someone was watching her, someone who knew everything. Someone who wasn't afraid to threaten her directly. As she stood there, trying to process what she had just read, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind her. She spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Evelyn. Samuel's voice was low, his face hidden in shadow. He stepped forward, emerging from the darkness. I didn't think they'd come after you this soon. Evelyn's hand tightened around the paper in her hand. Samuel, what the hell is going on? Who is doing this? Why is this happening? Samuel looked at her for a long moment before answering. His eyes, dark and filled with a mix of regret and something else, something Evelyn couldn't quite place, met hers. You're too close, Evelyn, he said quietly. I told you this was bigger than just a murder case. This goes all the way to the top. And the people who are behind this, they won't stop until they've destroyed everything. They're watching you. They're watching me. Evelyn's mind raced as she tried to process his words. Destroy everything? She thought back to the things she had uncovered, the names, the connections, the silent witnesses her father had written about. The conspiracy was vast, a labyrinth of power that no one person could escape from once they got too close. "I don't care," Evelyn said firmly, her voice steady but filled with determination. "I can't stop now. My father, he was right about everything. This isn't just about Calloway. It's about the system, about the people who've been pulling the strings for years. I have to finish this. I have to expose them." Samuel hesitated. His gaze softened as he looked at her, and for the first time, Evelyn saw the weight of everything he had been through in his eyes. He had been part of this world too, an investigator, someone who had worked the cases, chased down the criminals. But even he seemed uncertain about what was coming next. "You're right," he said after a long pause. "But this isn't just about the law anymore, Evelyn. It's about survival. And you need to understand that the moment you started digging into this, they marked you. They're coming for you. And they won't stop until you're silenced." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She knew he was right. She had already felt the heat of their gaze on her, the chill that had followed her every step. The threats, the anonymous messages, the warning to stop, she had known this moment would come. But now that it was here, it felt different. She took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. "I'm not backing down. Not now. Not ever." Samuel studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick file. He handed it to her wordlessly, and Evelyn took it with a sense of urgency. "This," Samuel said quietly, "is what you've been looking for. It's the missing piece. Everything your father uncovered, all the evidence he was collecting, is in there. It's all connected. But you have to be careful. Whoever is watching, they know you're close. They'll come after you the moment you try to expose this." Evelyn glanced at the file in her hands. Her pulse quickened as she realized what she was holding. This was it, the key to everything. The truth. And with it, the power to bring everything crashing down. "Thank you," Evelyn said, her voice barely a whisper. But she knew it wasn't just Samuel who had helped her. It was the truth that had guided her this far. And now, she had the tools to finish what her father had started. Chapter 7, The Betrayal. The neon glow of the diner sign flickered in the distance as Evelyn sat at a corner booth, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her coffee cup. The events of the past week had been a whirlwind, threats, cryptic messages, dangerous encounters. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still just scratching the surface. The silent witness, her father's investigation, Calloway's empire, and the power players behind it all were pieces of a puzzle that Evelyn couldn't solve alone. She needed someone she could trust, someone who could give her the final piece. Her phone buzzed, snapping her from her thoughts. The text message was from Claire. She hadn't heard from her best friend in days, not since she had told her about the depths of the conspiracy Evelyn was investigating. Claire had been distant, avoiding her calls and texts. And now the message was brief but to the point. "Meet me at the diner. I have something important to tell you." Evelyn's stomach twisted. The last time Claire had reached out like this, it was to warn her. But something felt off now. Claire had been too quiet, too distant. Evelyn had hoped that her closest friend had somehow remained untouched by the shadow of corruption that loomed over them both. But deep down, Evelyn knew that anyone connected to her was in danger. The web of deceit was far-reaching, and no one was safe, not even her. She stood up from the booth, grabbing her coat and making her way toward the door. As she stepped outside, the cold night air hit her face, and for a moment she hesitated. The shadows seemed deeper tonight, the air thicker, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The diner was just a few blocks away. It wasn't far, but the walk felt like a lifetime. Her thoughts raced with uncertainty. What was Claire going to say? What had changed? She had to know, but at the same time, she feared the answer. What if Claire was involved in this conspiracy? What if she had been playing both sides? Evelyn arrived at the diner a few minutes later. The lights inside were dim, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. The waitress gave her a quick glance before returning to the counter, not bothering to ask if she was seated. The air inside the diner felt heavy, like it was filled with the ghosts of the past. Claire was sitting at the same booth where they had shared so many meals together, her back to the door. Evelyn's heart skipped as she took a seat across from her friend, studying her face for any sign of what was to come. "You're here," Claire said, her voice soft, almost too soft. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed with something Evelyn couldn't quite place. But there was something else, something deeper, darker, lurking behind the surface. I didn't think you'd call, Evelyn replied, trying to keep her voice steady. You've been avoiding me. Claire's gaze flickered to the window for a moment, as if checking for anyone watching. When she looked back at Evelyn, her face was pale, but her eyes were filled with an emotion Evelyn couldn't decipher. I didn't want to get you involved, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I have no choice now. I've been working with them, Evelyn. I didn't have a choice. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. What are you talking about? You've been working with who? Claire looked around once more, then leaned in closer, her voice barely audible. The people behind it all. The ones who have been controlling everything. The ones who have been pulling the strings for years. I'm not just talking about Calloway. This goes far beyond him. I've been feeding them information, Evelyn. I've been feeding them everything about your investigation. Evelyn's heart sank, her chest tightening as she struggled to breathe. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Why? Why would you do that? You've been helping them, Claire? After everything. I had no choice, Claire replied, her voice trembling. They threatened my family, Evelyn. They told me that if I didn't help them, they'd make sure something happened to them. I thought I could get out of it, but they were always one step ahead. Every time I tried to walk away, they pulled me back in. Evelyn's mind raced as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The network she had been investigating wasn't just about Calloway. It was a much deeper conspiracy, one that had infiltrated every part of her life. Her father had known about it, and now, she was standing in the middle of it. But the betrayal was too much to ignore. Why didn't you tell me, Claire? Evelyn's voice cracked with emotion. Why didn't you come to me? I would have helped you. We could have stopped this together. I couldn't, Evelyn. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want you to get caught up in it. But I'm so sorry. I should have come to you sooner. Evelyn's mind was spinning, but a sense of clarity slowly began to take hold. Her best friend, the person she had trusted the most, had betrayed her. But Evelyn couldn't afford to let her emotions get the best of her now. There was too much at stake. The conspiracy had already taken too much from her. You need to tell me everything, Evelyn said, her voice steady but filled with a cold determination. Who else is involved? What do they want with me? Claire looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together in nervousness. I can't give you everything, Evelyn, but I'll tell you what I know. They've been watching you. They know you're getting too close, and they'll stop at nothing to make sure you don't expose them. They'll use me. They'll use anyone to keep their secrets hidden. Evelyn's chest tightened. Then we'll expose them together, she said. We'll finish what my father started. Claire's eyes widened. No, Evelyn. You don't understand. You can't expose them. Not without a plan. You have no idea who you're dealing with. They'll kill you. Evelyn's gaze hardened. I'm already dead if I don't. I've lost everything, and I'm not going to let them win. Claire's face crumpled with sorrow. I'm sorry. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. Evelyn stood up, the determination in her eyes clear. It's too late for apologies, Claire. It's time to finish this. Chapter 8, the final piece. The days were growing shorter, the nights longer, and Evelyn could feel the weight of everything pressing down on her. The betrayal she had just uncovered, her best friend, Claire, turning out to be one of the conspirators, had been a blow she wasn't ready for. Yet, in the midst of the chaos, a sense of clarity began to form. The pieces of the puzzle were aligning, and though the danger was more imminent than ever, Evelyn couldn't afford to step back now. Her father's notes, her investigation, the cryptic messages, it was all leading to the same conclusion. But the final piece remained elusive. She needed to find the silent witness, the person who held the key to unlocking everything. But who were they? And why had they been kept hidden for so long? The chilling phone call from earlier that night replayed in her mind. Whoever was behind this had already threatened her, and they had made it clear that they would do whatever it took to stop her. But Evelyn couldn't stop now. Not when she was so close. The conspiracy that had destroyed her father and threatened everyone she cared about was within reach. And now, it was her turn to finish what he had started. She sat in her apartment, the room dimly lit by the streetlights outside. The sound of rain tapping against the window created an eerie rhythm, and she could feel the tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. Her phone vibrated on the table, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a text from Samuel. He had been quiet for the last few days, his own warnings weighing heavily on her mind. The text was short, but it had a sense of urgency she couldn't ignore. We need to meet. I have new information. It's time to expose them, Evelyn. Her heart skipped a beat. Finally, It seemed like she was getting closer to the truth. She grabbed her coat and rushed out the door, her mind racing. Samuel had always been the one person who had stuck by her through the chaos. And if he had the missing piece she needed, now was the time to act. The rain soaked through her coat as she hurried down the street, the sound of her footsteps muffled by the storm. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her, the sense that her every move was being watched. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound louder. The city around her felt suffocating, and she couldn't help but wonder if it was too late, if it was already over. But she had no choice. The truth had to come out. She had to finish her father's work. Samuel was waiting for her in an old, rundown cafe on the outskirts of town. The place was nearly empty, the only customers a couple of old men sitting in the corner talking in low voices. Evelyn sat across from Samuel, her breath steady despite the tension gnawing at her. She hadn't seen him this serious before. "I've got something," he said without preamble, his voice grim. He slid a folder across the table. "This was left on my doorstep earlier. I don't know how they knew, but it's the last piece we need." Evelyn's pulse quickened as she opened the folder. Inside were more documents, names, dates, connections. It was the missing link between Calloway's empire and the secret network that had been pulling the strings. But there was one thing that caught her eye, a picture, yellowed with age, of a young woman. She stared at the photograph, her breath catching. The woman in the picture was unfamiliar, but something about her face seemed eerily familiar. A chill ran down Evelyn's spine as she turned the page, her eyes scanning the names beneath the photograph. "Who is she?" Evelyn whispered, her voice thick with confusion. Samuel leaned in, his face shadowed with concern. "Her name is Marissa Davenport. She's been under the radar for years, but she's connected to the top, one of the people behind it all. She's the silent witness, Evelyn." Evelyn froze, the weight of the words settling into her bones. The silent witness wasn't just a figure in the background. She had been a part of the conspiracy all along, hidden in plain sight. And now it was clear, Marissa Davenport was the one person who knew everything. But why had she been kept hidden? And why hadn't Evelyn's father discovered the full extent of her involvement? "This doesn't make sense," Evelyn murmured, turning the folder over and over in her hands. "If she's the key, why hasn't anyone found her? Why did my father leave me these clues? Why was she kept in the shadows?" Samuel sighed, rubbing his eyes. "I've been asking myself the same thing. But here's the thing. Marissa Davenport is no ordinary witness. She's been protected for a reason. She knows too much, and that makes her dangerous to them. If she was exposed, everything would come crashing down. That's why they've kept her hidden. That's why they've gone to such lengths to protect her." Evelyn's mind was spinning. The silent witness was real. And now, she had to find her, before the people behind the conspiracy found her first. But there was more at play here than just a simple search for one person. Marissa Davenport had been at the center of everything, and Evelyn was walking into the lion's den. "We need to find her," Evelyn said firmly, her voice filled with resolve. "She's the key to everything." Samuel nodded slowly. "But we have to be careful. We don't know who's watching us. We don't know who's on our side anymore." Evelyn stood up, her hand gripping the folder tightly. "I don't care who's watching. I'm going after the truth, and nothing's going to stop me." As she walked out of the cafe, the rain pouring down in sheets, Evelyn knew one thing for certain. Her father had been right. The silent witness was the key to everything. And now, with Marissa Davenport at the center of it all, Evelyn was determined to find her, no matter the cost. But the closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. She was no longer just fighting a case. She was fighting for her life. Chapter 9, The Dark Truth. The rain had subsided by the time Evelyn reached the warehouse, the place where she was supposed to meet Marissa Davenport. The city around her was quiet, too quiet, as though holding its breath. Evelyn's mind raced with questions, each more urgent than the last. Why had Marissa been kept hidden for so long? What did she know that could bring down the entire conspiracy? As she parked her car across the street from the warehouse, the towering structure loomed in the distance, casting long shadows in the dim light of the street lamps. The smell of wet concrete filled the air, and Evelyn's breath fogged in the cool night. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She couldn't afford to hesitate now. The silent witness, the key to everything, was within her grasp. Stepping out of the car, Evelyn quickly made her way across the street. The warehouse was large, its windows shattered in some places, and the door slightly ajar. She knew the dangers of this place. It was abandoned, just the kind of location the people behind the conspiracy would use to meet in secrecy. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She was about to meet the person who could change everything, but she also knew the risks. As she approached the door, she glanced around. No one in sight, but the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She wasn't alone. There was someone watching. She could feel it. Evelyn pushed the door open slowly, its rusty hinges creaking as she stepped inside. The warehouse was dark, save for the dim light filtering through broken windows. The place felt abandoned, desolate, empty except for the old crates and boxes stacked against the walls. But then she saw her. Marissa Davenport stood in the center of the room, her figure silhouetted against the light. She looked almost like a ghost, pale and gaunt, her face hidden in shadow. She was wearing a simple black coat, but there was an air of authority about her, something sharp in the way she stood, poised and alert. "You're late," Marissa's voice echoed in the silent room. It was soft but firm, and it sent a chill through Evelyn's bones. "I had to make sure I wasn't being followed," Evelyn replied, her voice steady but her heart racing. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on the woman who held the key to unraveling everything. "I've been looking for you. I need your help." Marissa said nothing for a moment, studying Evelyn closely, as though deciding whether or not to trust her. Then, with a quiet sigh, she stepped forward, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and something else. "Regret, perhaps?" "You're in too deep," Marissa finally said, her voice heavy with the weight of experience. "You don't understand what you're up against." Evelyn's chest tightened. "I know exactly what I'm up against. I've been investigating the conspiracy for weeks now. I know about the network, the politicians, the judges, the businessmen, all of them tied to Victor Calloway. But I need you to tell me everything. My father was killed because of this. And now I'm next. I need you to help me expose them." Marissa's eyes flickered, a brief flash of something, fear maybe, crossing her face. She turned away from Evelyn, her shoulders stiff as if weighed down by something invisible. "They'll kill you if you keep digging," Marissa said quietly. "You think you're safe, but you're not. These people have power beyond what you can imagine. Your father was right to investigate, but he was foolish to think he could bring them down. I know what they're capable of. I've seen it." Evelyn stepped closer, the urgency in her voice rising. "What do you mean? Who are they? Who's behind all of this?" Marissa hesitated, her hand brushing against the cold metal crate next to her. The air in the room seemed to grow thicker, the tension palpable. Finally, Marissa spoke again, her words low but steady. "The network is bigger than you think. They've been operating in the shadows for years, using their influence to control everything. The media, the courts, even the police. They've infiltrated every level of government, every corporation, every major institution. And they're not just businessmen or politicians. They're powerful figures in the legal world, in law enforcement. People you trust. People you think are on your side." Evelyn felt a coldness seep into her chest. The people she had believed in, the people who had always seemed above reproach, Samuel, Richard Gale, even Claire, had they all been part of this? Was there anyone she could trust? "I don't care how deep they are," Evelyn said, her voice sharp now, the fear giving way to anger. "I'm not going to let them win. I'll expose them, no matter the cost. I'll finish what my father started." Marissa turned to face her, her expression softening slightly. "You don't understand, Evelyn. They're untouchable. They have everything. If you go public with this, they'll destroy you. They'll destroy everything you've worked for. They won't just kill you. They'll erase everything about you, every memory, every connection. You won't exist. No one will believe you. They'll make sure of that." Evelyn's blood ran cold at the thought, but she knew deep down that she couldn't walk away now. Too much was at stake. Too many lives had already been lost. Her father had died fighting to expose the truth, and she would not let his death be in vain. "Then I'll take them down one by one," Evelyn said, determination hardening in her voice. "I'll tear down the walls they've built, and I'll make sure they never control anyone again. You can help me, or you can walk away. But I'm not stopping." Marissa's eyes flickered with a mix of hesitation and something else. Fear, maybe, but also respect. She stepped closer, her voice low but filled with urgency. "Then we do this carefully," Marissa said, her gaze intense. "But you need to understand something. No matter what happens, they'll come for you. You'll never be safe again. If we're going to bring them down, we have to be smarter than they are. And that means playing the game their way." Evelyn nodded, the weight of the decision sinking into her bones. The battle had just begun, and it was one that would take everything from her. But she couldn't turn back now. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said quietly, her resolve hardening. "But I need to know everything. I need to know who's at the top of this network, who's pulling the strings." Marissa hesitated again, her eyes flickering to the side. She glanced over her shoulder, as though making sure no one was watching. Then, in a quiet voice, she spoke. "I'll tell you, but you need to understand, this isn't just about us anymore. This is bigger than both of us. And if you want to survive, you'll need to do what I say." Evelyn leaned in, her breath steady, her heart racing. "Tell me everything." Chapter 10, The Silent Witness Unmasked. Evelyn's head spun as she left the abandoned warehouse, the weight of everything Marissa had revealed pressing down on her chest. The puzzle was starting to come together, but each new piece made the picture even more complicated. Marissa, the silent witness, was the key. She knew everything, and yet she had been hidden for so long. Evelyn now understood why, because the truth she held could bring everything crashing down. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. The more she uncovered, the more certain she became. The conspiracy had to end. The corrupt network, the power players controlling everything from the media to the judicial system, they had to be exposed. And Evelyn would be the one to do it, even if it meant risking her life. The message Marissa had given her still echoed in her mind. "They'll come for you. You won't be safe anymore. But if you're going to do this, you have to do it carefully. They have eyes everywhere." Evelyn knew Marissa was right. The stakes were higher than ever. There was no room for mistakes. The network was vast, and the people behind it were powerful. They had been pulling the strings for years, controlling everything from the top down. But it wasn't just about power, it was about survival. If she exposed them, they wouldn't hesitate to destroy her, just like they had destroyed her father. She pulled into the parking lot of the small apartment complex she'd been using as a safe house. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the empty lot. It was late, but she couldn't afford to sleep. Not yet. Not when everything was so close to being uncovered. As she entered the building, the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Something didn't feel right. The hallways were eerily quiet, but Evelyn felt the weight of eyes on her. She glanced over her shoulder, but there was no one there. She had become too used to being watched. It was a constant feeling now, the sense that someone was always lurking, waiting for her to slip up. She hurried up the stairs to her apartment, unlocking the door and stepping inside. The small space was quiet, but the sense of unease lingered. She wasn't alone. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach. Evelyn closed the door behind her, double-locking it before quickly scanning the room. The shadows in the corners seemed darker than usual. She placed the file from Marissa on the table, her hands trembling as she reached for the burner phone she had been using to communicate with Samuel. She had to get in touch with him. He was her only ally left. But as her finger hovered over the screen, the sudden sound of a knock on the door made her freeze. Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, she stood still, straining her ears to listen. The knock came again, softer this time. It was deliberate, calm, as if the person on the other side knew she was there. Evelyn's heart raced. She didn't have time to wonder who it could be. She had to make a decision. Should she confront whoever it was, or stay hidden, hoping they'd leave? She couldn't risk being seen. Not now. Not when she was so close to exposing everything. She turned toward the window and peeked through the blinds. The faint glow of a car's headlights illuminated the street, but there was no sign of movement. Whoever was at the door wasn't in a hurry. Another knock, this time louder. There was no mistaking it. The person on the other side knew she was inside. Evelyn's mind raced as she quickly weighed her options. The door had a chain lock, but it wouldn't be enough to stop someone determined to get in. She grabbed the kitchen knife, her grip tight around the handle. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. She took a deep breath and moved toward the door, her steps quiet but quick. Her hand rested on the doorknob, and she paused, listening for any sign of movement. The knock came again, this time more urgent, followed by a low voice. "Evelyn, it's me. Open up." The voice was familiar, but she couldn't place it. Her pulse quickened. She pressed her ear against the door, straining to make out the words. "I don't have much time," the voice continued, more frantic now. "Let me in, please." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The desperation in the voice was unmistakable, but she couldn't let her guard down. She'd trusted people before, and they had betrayed her. She wasn't going to make the same mistake again. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with suspicion. There was a long pause. Then finally the voice spoke again, softer this time. Evelyn, it's Claire. Her heart skipped a beat. Claire, her best friend, the woman who had betrayed her, who had fed information to the very people who had been hunting her. But now Claire was at her door, pleading for entry. Evelyn's mind raced. She couldn't let her in, not without knowing why she had come. But the pain in Claire's voice, the fear, pulled at something deep inside of her. She took a deep breath, making her decision. I'll let you in, Evelyn said, her voice steady. But you better have a damn good explanation. The sound of a breath escaping on the other side of the door told her everything she needed to know. Claire was just as scared as she was. With a firm hand, Evelyn unlocked the chain, and then the door itself. The moment she opened it, Claire rushed in, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. She looked over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to follow her. Close the door, Claire said, her voice trembling. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She slammed the door shut behind Claire, locking it once more. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion and emotion. What was Claire doing here? Why had she come back after everything? I don't have much time, Claire said quickly, her breath short and labored. They're coming for you, Evelyn. You need to get out of here. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? You're the one who betrayed me, Claire. What more could you possibly say to make me trust you? Claire's eyes flickered with guilt, but she pushed forward, urgency in her voice. I know. I fucked up. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because you need to know something. They've been watching you. I don't know how much you've uncovered, but they know everything. And now they're going to make sure you never expose them. Evelyn's mind spun. What are you saying? Who's coming for me? Claire stepped closer, her voice shaking. The ones at the top. They've known you were getting too close, and now they're sending someone to make sure you can't finish this. I can't protect you, but I can help you get out before it's too late. Evelyn's breath caught in her chest. The danger was closer than she thought, and Claire was the last person she expected to warn her. But the fear in Claire's eyes was genuine. I'll help you, Claire whispered, but you need to trust me. Just this once. Evelyn stood frozen, torn between the truth and her distrust. Could she trust Claire? Could she trust anyone? But in this game of shadows, she didn't have a choice. Chapter 11, The Unbelievable Escape. Evelyn's mind raced as she stared at Claire, her breath shallow. The last thing she had expected was for Claire to return, pleading for Evelyn's trust. After everything, the betrayal, the secrecy, the lies, it seemed impossible. Yet, here Claire was, desperate and vulnerable, and something in her voice told Evelyn that there was more at play than what she could see. I don't know if I can trust you, Claire, Evelyn said, her voice steady but filled with caution. She wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Her entire world had been turned upside down in the span of a few weeks. Every ally she had once relied on had either turned against her or been taken away. Now, the person she had once considered her closest friend was standing in front of her, begging for forgiveness. I know, Claire whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I don't expect you to, but you have to listen. They've been tracking you, Evelyn, watching your every move. They know you're closing in on them, and they're not going to let you finish what your father started. If you don't leave now, they'll make sure you never see the light of day again. Evelyn's chest tightened. She had suspected as much. The threats, the warnings, the way the walls seemed to close in on her. She wasn't just investigating a conspiracy. She was becoming the target of it. And now, with Claire's confession, Evelyn realized just how deep the corruption ran. These people, whoever they were untouchable. They had eyes everywhere. The game had changed. How do you know all of this? Evelyn asked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fear. How do you know they're coming for me? Claire shook her head, guilt and fear written on her face. I've been keeping an eye on you, Evelyn. I couldn't leave it alone. But I didn't realize how much danger you were really in. The people I've been working for, they've been manipulating everything. They knew what your father was getting close to, and they've been preparing for this. You're a threat to them now, and they won't let you expose them. Evelyn's mind reeled. She had suspected that there was something larger going on, but hearing it from Claire, someone who had been so close to the conspiracy, made it all the more real. The fear in her friend's eyes was palpable, and for the first time, Evelyn began to feel the weight of the danger she was in. Why should I believe you, Claire? Evelyn asked, her voice shaking with frustration. You've been working for them all this time. You've lied to me. How can I trust you now? I never wanted to hurt you, Evelyn, Claire whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't have a choice. They threatened my family. I thought I could help you from the inside, but I couldn't. I'm sorry, but if you don't leave now, if you don't get out of here, they'll kill you. You have to go. I can't protect you anymore." Evelyn stood frozen, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She could feel the coldness in the air around her, the weight of the truth settling in her chest. There was no time to waste. If Claire was telling the truth, then the people behind this conspiracy were already preparing to make their move. She wasn't just fighting a corrupt businessman or a corrupt system anymore. She was fighting for her life. "Where will I go?" Evelyn asked, her voice soft but filled with determination. She wasn't running away from this. She had come too far. "I can't just disappear." Claire hesitated, glancing nervously around the room. "You can't stay here. I've made arrangements for you. There's a safe house, a place where they can't find you. But you have to leave now, Evelyn. They're already looking for you." Evelyn's pulse quickened. She could feel the gravity of the situation weighing on her. If she didn't leave now, if she didn't take the opportunity to disappear, it would be too late. She had been so focused on exposing the truth that she had forgotten the most important thing, her own survival. "I'll go," Evelyn said, her voice resolute. "But this isn't over. I'll find a way to take them down. You've helped me, Claire, but this is far from finished." Claire's face softened, her eyes filled with both fear and relief. "I know, but if you stay, you'll be dead before you get the chance to finish anything. I won't let them take you. Not after everything." Evelyn nodded, knowing that Claire was right. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't wait for them to find her. The conspiracy had already cost her so much, and she wouldn't let it take everything from her. She would fight back, no matter the cost. The two women quickly gathered what little they could, the sense of urgency growing with each passing moment. Evelyn felt like she was walking through a fog, the reality of the situation sinking in. The people who had controlled everything, the judges, the politicians, the businessmen, had their sights on her. They would stop at nothing to keep their secrets hidden. As they reached the door, Evelyn paused, her hand on the doorknob. "I'll finish this," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But I need you to stay safe, Claire. You've already done enough. Don't get caught in this anymore." Claire nodded, her face pale but resolute. "I'll be careful. You just make sure you stay alive. Don't do anything stupid." Evelyn opened the door, the cool night air hitting her face as she stepped outside. The darkness felt thicker tonight, the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders. She was no longer just a lawyer defending a case. She was a woman caught in the middle of a war she hadn't chosen, but one she had no choice but to fight. As they made their way down the narrow street, Evelyn glanced back one last time. The door to her apartment had closed behind her, but she knew it was only a matter of time before the walls came crashing down. Whoever was watching her, whoever had been watching her from the shadows, would not stop until they had silenced her. But Evelyn wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. As the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, Evelyn knew that her life would never be the same. The final piece of the puzzle had been put in place. She had the information she needed, and now it was time to take down the people who had stolen everything from her. She wasn't running away anymore. She was running toward the truth. The Silent Witness Part 2 is out. Click link in bio. What do you think of the story so far? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to share and subscribe and hit the notification button for more thrilling stories.